ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ ವೀಕ್ಷಕರೇ. ಜನಶಕ್ತಿ ಮೀಡಿಯಾ ಈ ವರ್ಷದ ಕೇಂದ್ರದ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಒಕ್ಕೂಟ ಸರ್ಕಾರದ ಬಜೆಟ್ ಅನ್ನ ಸರಣಿಯಾಗಿ ಚರ್ಚೆ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದೆ. ನಾವ್ ಈಗಾಗಲೇ ಹೇಳಿದ ಹಾಗೆ ಬಜೆಟ್ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಕೆಲವರು ಅದನ್ನ ಒಪ್ತಾರೆ, ಕೆಲವರು ಅದನ್ನ ಟೀಕೆ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ. ಬಜೆಟ್ ಅನ್ನ ಆಳವಾಗಿ ಅಧ್ಯಯನ ಮಾಡಿ ಅದರ ಪರಿಣಾಮ ಏನಾಗತ್ತೆ ಅಂತ ಯೋಚನೆ ಮಾಡೋ ಅಂತವರು ಅದ್ರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಒಂದು ವಸ್ತುನಿಷ್ಠ ವಿಶ್ಲೇಷಣೆಯನ್ನ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ. ಅಂತಹ ಒಂದು ಸರಣಿ ಚರ್ಚೆಯ ಮುಂದುವರೆದ ಭಾಗವಾಗಿ ಇವತ್ತು ನಾವು ಮಹಿಳೆಯರು ಮತ್ತು ಬಜೆಟ್ ಅಥವಾ ಈ ವರ್ಷದ ಬಜೆಟ್ಟಿನ ಪರಿಣಾಮ ಮಹಿಳೆಯರ ಮೇಲೆ ಏನಾಗಿದೆ, ನಿರೀಕ್ಷೆಗಳು ಏನಿದ್ವು, ಅದನ್ನು ಹೇಗೆ ಸ್ವೀಕರಿಸಬೇಕು, ಅದೊಂದು ಸವಾಲ ಅಥವಾ ಒಪ್ಕೋಬೇಕಾದಂಥದ್ದ ಅನ್ನುವಂಥದ್ದನ್ನ ಚರ್ಚೆ ಮಾಡೋದಕ್ಕೆ ನಿಮ್ಮ ಮುಂದೆ ಬಂದಿದ್ದೀವಿ. ನಾನು KS ವಿಮ್ಲಾ. ನನ್ನ ಜೊತೆ ಇವತ್ತು ಬಜೆಟ್ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಚರ್ಚೆ ಮಾಡೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಅಖಿಲ ಭಾರತ ಜನವಾದಿ ಮಹಿಳಾ ಸಂಘಟನೆ ಸ್ವಾತಂತ್ರ್ಯ ಪೂರ್ವದಿಂದನೇ ತನ್ನ ಮಹಿಳಾ ಪರತೆಯನ್ನ ಜನಪರತೆಯನ್ನ ಇಟ್ಕೊಂಡು ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಂತಹ ಒಂದು ಮಹಿಳಾ ಸಮೂಹದ ಭಾಗವಾಗಿ ಇದ್ದಂತಹ ಸಂಘಟನೆ ಈಗ ಜನವಾದಿ ಮಹಿಳಾ ಸಂಘಟನೆ ಅಂತ ಕಳೆದ 4.5 ದಶಕಗಳಿಂದ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇರುವ ದೇಶದ 1 ಕೋಟಿಗೂ ಹೆಚ್ಚು ನಗರ, ಗ್ರಾಮ ಮತ್ತು ಎಲ್ಲ ವಿಭಾಗದ ಎಲ್ಲ ಸ್ತರಗಳ ಮಹಿಳೆಯರನ್ನ ಸದಸ್ಯರನ್ನಾಗಿ ಹೊಂದಿ ಮಹಿಳೆಯರ ನಿಜವಾದ ಒಂದು ಪ್ರಗತಿಗಾಗಿ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇರುವಂತಹ ಸಂಘಟನೆಯ ಅಖಿಲ ಭಾರತ ಪ್ರಧಾನ ಕಾರ್ಯದರ್ಶಿಯಾಗಿರುವ ಮರಿಯಂ ಧವಳೆ ಅವರಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಅವರನ್ನ ಸ್ವಾಗತಿಸೋಣ. ವೆಲ್ಕಮ್ ಟು ಜನಶಕ್ತಿ ಮೀಡಿಯಾ, ಮರಿಯಂ.
Thank you for having me here.
We are very happy that you are here with us to discuss about budget and its impact on women and generally the issues which are really bothering women of the country in particular, and generally definitely when it is bothering women, definitely all other public sphere also it will have its impact.
Yes, naturally.
So we would like to know from you, basically starting from the present budget which is presented by the finance minister on Feb 1st and its impact.
Yeah. Thank you, Vimla, and thank you to Janashakti for having me here. And it's a very important topic, and I believe your art studio is doing a lot of important work, and this is a very important topic that you are discussing on. So the All India Democratic Women's Association has been appealing for a long time that the budget should consist of certain schemes or certain proposals by which the problems that women are facing in specific and in generally the country, the government, it's the responsibility to try and alleviate those problems. And the main issue facing today is of unemployment and price rise. But unemployment is not at all touched upon in this budget. In fact, the Manarega, which had really been a lifesaver, especially during the corona time, has just been overlooked by the government. Not only have they not increased the budget, they have also not added any kind of allocation to pay the wages that are still pending. Thousands of rupees or crores of rupees of wages are still pending all over the country. Now, the poorest of the poor work in Manarega, and basically they work in Manarega for survival. But even that is not at all considered in the budget. So it only means that Manarega work is going to be less. There will be more migration from the rural areas. There will be more disastrous situations in the lives of the rural people. Secondly, is the price rise. There is absolutely no control, and it has been consistently rising. So all essential items are going out of the hands of the poor. We are finding there are a lot of studies which say that the consumption levels of food have decreased. People are not getting 2 square meals a day. People are eating less. Malnutrition has increased. Hunger has increased. But even that is not being paid attention to. Along with hunger comes the issue of food security. The public distribution system provides some kind of a relief to the people, and especially women, because women are very concerned about the food security within the homes. But today the public distribution system is totally being dismantled. In fact, it's already dismantled because you don't get anything in the ration shops. and the government is not even providing subsidized grains. Earlier it was giving 2 rupees kilo wheat and 3 rupees kilo rice, which has been stopped. Now public distribution system is a right because it is as per the law, as per the act, and the government it's the duty of the government to provide it. Now what the Modi government has done is that they providing that 5 kilos of free grains, which is also reduced now. Now they are giving less, either they are giving less or they are just cancelling ration cards across the board, and so there is a reduction in the number of people who are receiving those free grains also. So those free grains is a scheme, and the government is behaving as if it is being merciful to the hungry. I mean, the government being merciful is the duty of the government. They should be ashamed of themselves that people are hungry in the country. And by a scheme, it means if tomorrow, one fine day, the Prime Minister decides that serving as he is serving Ambani and Adani, and he feels that he should give them more benefits, he may suddenly decide to just close the scheme. And then you cannot fight again, because it's a scheme. It's kind of according to the wishes of the government. So on one hand, the scheme will also close, and the PDS is also not working. So then the women will be left at the market, where they will not be able to afford the kind of prices that is already there. So no employment means no livelihood, no income coming in, and the second part is food is not being supplied cheaply. Third point is the whole change in policies across the board. That is, you see the education policy is changing. It means a lot of young girls are going to be out of the education system again, especially higher education. The University Grants Commission, the law that they want to make, the amendment, in our Central Executive Committee meeting, we passed a resolution against that and asked for its withdrawal. So the independent functioning of universities, handing over universities to the corporates, privatizing education across the board, digitalizing education, corporatization of education will again hamper the educational facilities of the poor. All other things are also going in the same way. Increasing violence. We had a scheme whereby there was rehabilitation of women. Now even those schemes are being cut down. In fact, there is no allocation in those schemes. We are not finding allocations over there. And because the allocations are decreasing, and on one hand the National Crime Records Bureau is saying that violence is increasing, but in spite of that, the proper shelter homes, rehabilitation facilities, where will a victim of violence go to save herself? We are finding the conviction rate in the country is only 27%. That means a majority of the criminals are going scot-free. Secondly, the support by the administration, by the government in power to the criminals. So many of them are from the party, from the BJP themselves, and they can say anything what they want and get away with it. And unfortunately, we are finding such people even getting elected to the parliament. It is to the credit of the women and the people of Karnataka that Prajwal Revanna was shown his place, and he did not win the elections after such heinous crimes against women in Karnataka. So this situation is putting women into very insecure conditions, because on one hand you are having a large number of unorganized labor. Since organized work is not available, women are pushed into unorganized labor where there are no security laws. And once you are pushed into unorganized labor, means you are exposed to all kinds of exploitation, not just economic, even sexual exploitation. And across the board it is happening. The most important change that is occurring, and which is really not being discussed, which the ADWA has taken up in a very big way, is the mass indebtedness of women. Today, across the board, women are taking consumption loans just for survival. They have no other means. So even to survive, they have to take those loans. And the government policy has so changed that the RBI today allows the microfinance institutions to take loans from banks and double those interest rates and suck the bloods of the poor women. Poor women do not understand what are the rates of interest imposed on them. Even if they've taken a loan of 50,000, they are paying back something like 60 or 80,000 or even 1 lakh. They are not aware of it. And the installments that they have to pay, they cannot pay because the consumption loans, they have consumed it. There is no way of repaying back. And these sort of vulture-like agents, they come over there. There is tremendous harassment. There is abuse. There are times when women are forced to undergo sexual exploitation. Even their family members, husbands push them into the arms of these agents for having a settlement because they cannot pay the installments. And the AIDWA is conducting a national level survey on this, and we want to bring this whole issue on the forefront, demanding one is there should be severe regulation of the MFIs. There should be a cap on the interest rates. Lowest amount of interest rate should be taken. We are saying you just give 2% interest or 4% interest maximum, as we are asking for the self-help groups from banks. Similarly, it should be over here. There cannot be uncontrolled way of distributing money. They are luring money. They are luring the women with cheap kind of loans without any collaterals. Now, somebody whose husband is in the hospital needs 10,000 rupees immediately. Otherwise, her husband will not be alive. What will such a woman do if some MFI person comes and lures her with some kind of a cheap loan? She will take that money. But then 10,000 rupees she takes, she cannot repay back, then she will take from another MFI. Like that way, one woman has taken loans from 3, 10, 17 MFIs. We are finding women now in Karnataka, in nearly 11 to 12 districts, there have been cases of suicide. We have seen in Orissa, everywhere across the board in India today, suicides are occurring because the women cannot take the humiliation, the abuse, and are unable to pay back the loan. So this has to be brought into the forefront. It is a national issue. It is an issue which the government needs to address, which it is totally ignoring. And when it should give relief to the people, it is giving lakhs of crores of rupees of concessions to the corporates. This is a very shameful thing. Our Prime Minister has been shielding Mr. Adani, who has a criminal case against him in America. It's a very shameful thing. So this is what is happening. And then they also use religion and caste. They're trying to change the constitution of the country. They're trying to change all laws of the country. We are finding that the laws of self-choice, which our constitution guarantees us, is also being violated. In fact, anti-constitutional laws are being made to prevent self-choice marriages, interfaith marriages, intercaste marriages, and unfortunately, very, very unfortunate for women of the country, we are finding certain courts are giving very anti-women judgments. As recent as the Chhattisgarh High Court has given an extremely objectionable judgment saying that a husband cannot be penalized if he commits unnatural, forceful sex on his wife without her consent. It is not a crime. And in this case, where the judgment has been given that it is not a crime, the wife has died because of that unnatural sex. In her dying statement, she has given that the excessive bleeding was because her husband forced himself on her, committing that unnatural sex. And the judge has given a statement, an order, saying that a husband cannot be penalized because rape is not recognized within marriage. So AIDWA has been fighting a case in the Supreme Court for recognition of marital rape as a crime. But this is not only marital rape, it is marital rape along with unnatural sex. So we have no idea of what kind of brutality that husband has indulged in, which has led to the death of the wife. So these are different aspects which are troubling the women of the country, and that's what we have discussed in our meeting also, which we had a wonderful meeting organized by the EDWA Karnataka State Committee, and we have taken a lot of decisions to take forward all these issues and mobilize women for their rights, which the constitution guarantees them, that is equal rights and a life and a right to live a life with dignity.
Okay, so you are mentioning about microfinance institutions and the excesses which is happening. Especially in Karnataka, we are just now witnessing. Of course, in 2010 or so, way back, Andhra, the
Yes.
undivided Andhra, that kind of incidents were happening. And now Karnataka is witnessing lot of suicides, and women and the whole family, they are deserting the villages.
Right.
So that is happening. And Karnataka government is trying to bring out an ordinance, and Governor of Karnataka has not consented
Yes.
that
Yes.
ordinance.
Yes.
And of course Karnataka government is planning to bring a law also. But as this whole finance sector is controlled by the central government,
Right.
so what do you say about that?
See, one is we don't know what the ordinance is saying, but anyway, we hope the ordinance would be to help to curb this loot by the MFIs. But the governor not giving any kind of a proactive kind of acceptance to this kind of ordinance is being experienced across the board in the country. We are finding governors who are, as agents of the central government, not agreeing to sign on laws made by the governments which are of opposition parties. We've seen it in Tamil Nadu, in Kerala, in Karnataka. In many places, the governors are what you call, just quietly submitting to the whims and fancies and the dictates of the central government. It's a violation of the federal structure of the country. So that's very reprehensible, and we feel that the people of Karnataka should come out on the roads to not accept an insult to the right of the people. The people have elected the government, and the governor has no right to sit on the laws or any kind of schemes that the state government is trying to make. If the people do not like it, then the people of Karnataka will fight against it. But it's the duty of the government to sign on it and to see to it that it goes back to the assembly where it can be discussed and debated on. So that's not correct on their part to do that, and I think that needs to be addressed.
Okay, when talking to you, suddenly this question, I'm getting this kind of a doubt. So there is not just now, earlier also this kind of opinions were there. The governor post should not be there, that should be abolished. So what is your opinion on that?
Well, at present it's there. So, see, basically, governors' posts were not always used like this. There have been times when the governors have acted only as agents. In this constitutional setup at present, that needs much more debate, because governors, president that we have, they are actually looked upon as ceremonial posts in that sense. So whether needed, not needed, and if you tell me the way the governors are functioning, obviously they are more of a obstacle to the democratic functioning of our country. So anything that's an obstacle should not be there.
Yeah,
So
I know. Anyway, of course, it's democratic setup and the constitution which we have accepted, governors, that post is there. But whenever, not just now, earlier also, whichever the government is there in the center, when they want to take revenge or to teach a lesson to the state government, they were making use of governor's office. So in a later way, I just asked you that. And one last question. The whole budget and its impact. Of course, you have given one elaborated view on that. So, in the meantime, you mentioned that you had your Central Executive Committee in Bangalore, in Karnataka. So, immediate task, if at all you have pointed out something, so if you can.
Yes, so against the price rise, we are having a national level mass signature campaign going on.
Oh.
We are appealing to every citizen of the country, man and woman, that against this price rise, raise your voice and have signatures. So we are going into public areas, we are going to markets, our women are moving around everywhere. So far we have collected more than 5 lakh signatures all over the country, and we are sending the signatures to the governor to be sent to the Prime Minister of the country. And with that, we are generating a movement which will explain to the people that price rise can be controlled, and has to be controlled by the government. The government cannot lift its hands of its responsibility. So that is what we are doing. And against price rise, when we are doing that, we are also asking for the strengthening of the public distribution system. Then we have taken up a movement along with this for the functioning of the Manarega, for the act should to be implemented for increase of allocation. So that struggle is also going on at the village level. In fact, in Karnataka has got a very good experience in some districts where hundreds of villages have been mobilized for the implementation of Manarega. So wherever they don't get work, we organize them and we fight for the right to get the work. Then the third point that we have taken up is on discussion on these whole changes of laws that the government is doing, and create a discussion, awareness that how it is unconstitutional and how it is hampering democratic functioning, democratic rights in our country regarding the laws for having our own, the right to live a life of one's choice. Then one very major campaign we are taking. You see what is happening in the country. The Modi government, the BJP and the RSS, what are they doing? They are trying to totally usurp and demolish the entire progressive, entire alternative streams of thoughts that have been in the country, by all the time making a propaganda and all the time publicizing that the Manusmriti or any kind of the regressive ideology that promotes the caste system, a Brahminical structure, that is the culture of India. That is what they are trying to all the time push. And along with that, they are linking it with nationalism. They are saying if you support the caste system, then you are nationalist. But if you are opposing it, if you are opposing dowry, if you are opposing sati, if you are asking for equal rights, then you are an anti-nationalist. That means they are trying to push as if India was always a Brahminical, regressive ideology and a caste system wise. That is the culture. Now, since ancient India, there have been challenges to this. There have been social reform movements. There have been people who have even given up their lives fighting the whole Brahminical brutality towards Dalits, towards women. So, we have decided that from 14th April, Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar's birth anniversary day, we are going to have jathas all over the country with and taking the legacy. You see, social reformers also, all of them are not still known. We know some big names like Mahatma Jyotiba Phule, Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, Periyar, Srinarayan Guru. We know such names. But there are many more men and women who are unknown faces, but who can be brought to life, because that is the legacy of India. Legacy of India is not only Brahmanism. Legacy is also the struggle against the brutality of Brahmanism, and that is also the culture of India. So that is what we have decided to bring in the forefront all over the country. hundreds and thousands of women will be taking out jathas into the villages, into the roads, in the streets, and talking about the social reform movement. Who are the people who opposed the law against widow who raised their voice against widow remarriage, against child marriage, against abolition of sati? Who are the people? They are the Sanatanis, the forefathers of this BJP and the RSS at that point of time. They are the ones who opposed, and they are the ones who are trying to reimpose it now again on the country, which the democratic, secular, progressive women's movement and citizens of this country can never accept. And so that is why it is our duty to challenge them by saying what they are saying is not true. Even Mahatma Jyotiba Phule, Savitribai Phule, then Fatima Sheikh, and all these people are also the legacy of India. Add one more.
Yeah,
on the microfinance, we have decided that we will have a big national level public hearing where we will invite the RBI, Reserve Bank of India officials, economists, intellectuals, journalists. We will invite your channel also. Please do come to Delhi, and we will have a massive campaign. Let people know what women of India are undergoing in this extremely economic critical situation. So that is what we have also planned.
So wonderful to know all these things, Mariam. Thank you very much for giving this kind of complete insights. ಇದಾಗಿತ್ತು ವೀಕ್ಷಕರೇ, ಸರಣಿ ಚರ್ಚೆಯನ್ನು ಮಾಡುವಾಗ ಹಲವಾರು ಹೊಸ ಹೊಸ ಅಂಶಗಳು ನಮಗೆ ಸಿಗ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾವೆ. ಇವತ್ತು ಮರಿಯಂ ಧವಳೆ ಅವರು ಮಾತಾಡುವಾಗ ಕೇವಲ ಬಜೆಟನ್ನು ಕೇಂದ್ರೀಕರಿಸಿ ಮಾತಾಡಲಿಲ್ಲ. ಬಜೆಟ್ ಒಂದು ನೆಪ ಅಷ್ಟೇನೆ. ಯಾಕಂದರೆ ನಾವು ಈ ಹಿಂದೆನೂ ಮಾತಾಡಿದಾಗೆ ಇತ್ತೀಚೆಗೆ ಬಜೆಟ್ ತನ್ನ ಪ್ರಾಮುಖ್ಯತೆಯನ್ನು ಕಳ್ಕೊಂಡಿದೆ. ಬಜೆಟಿನ ಹಿಂದಿನ ದಿನನೂ ಬಜೆಟಲ್ಲಿ ಬರಬೇಕಾಗಿದ್ದು ಅನೌನ್ಸ್ ಆಗಿರುತ್ತೆ. ಬಜೆಟಿನ ಮಾರನೇ ದಿನ, ಹಿಂದಿನ ದಿನ ಬಜೆಟಲ್ಲಿ ಪ್ರೆಸೆಂಟ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದೇನೆ ಇಲ್ಲದೆ ಇರುವಂತಹ ನೀತಿಗಳು ಬರುವಂತಹ ನೀತಿ ಆಯೋಗ ಅಂತ ಇಟ್ಕೊಂಡಿರುವಂತಹ ಸಂದರ್ಭ ಇದು. ಆದರೆ ಮರಿಯಂ ಧವಳೆ ಅವರು ಮಾತಾಡುವಾಗ ಒಟ್ಟಾರೆಯಾಗಿ ಇಡೀ ದೇಶದ ಜನಸಂಖ್ಯೆಯ ಸುಮಾರು ಅರ್ಧ ಭಾಗ ಇರುವಂತಹ ಮಹಿಳೆಯರು ಎದುರಿಸ್ತಾ ಇರುವಂತಹ ಹಲವಾರು ಸಮಸ್ಯೆಗಳು ಮತ್ತು ಒಂದು ಸರ್ಕಾರ ತಾನು ಪರವಾಗಿ ಇರಬೇಕು ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ಜನರಿಂದ ಆಯ್ಕೆಯಾಗಿ ಬಂದಾಗ ತನ್ನ ಸಾಂವಿಧಾನಿಕ ಜವಾಬ್ದಾರಿಗಳನ್ನ ನಿಭಾಯಿಸದೇ ಇದ್ರೆ ಆ ಸಮಾಜ ಎದುರಿಸುವಂತಹ ಹಲವಾರು ಸಮಸ್ಯೆಗಳನ್ನ ಮಹಿಳೆಯರ ಕಣ್ಣೋಟದಲ್ಲಿ ಮುಂದಿಟ್ಟಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಇದಾಗಿತ್ತು ನಮ್ಮ ಇವತ್ತಿನ ಈ ಸರಣಿ ಬಜೆಟಿನ ಚರ್ಚೆಯ ಒಂದು ಭಾಗ. ಹೀಗೇನೆ ಬಜೆಟಿನ ಬೇರೆ ಬೇರೆ ಆಯಾಮಗಳನ್ನ ನಾವು ಮುಂದುವರಿಸೋಣ. ಈ ಮೊದಲು ಹೇಳಿದ ಹಾಗೆ ಇನ್ನೇನು ಕರ್ನಾಟಕ ರಾಜ್ಯದ ಬಜೆಟ್ ಕೂಡ ಮಂಡನೆ ಆಗ್ಲಿಕ್ಕಿದೆ. ಸೊ ಆ ಬಜೆಟ್ ಅನ್ನು ಇಟ್ಕೊಂಡು ನಿಮ್ ಜೊತೆ ಹಲವು ರೀತಿಯ ಚರ್ಚೆಗಳನ್ನ ಮಾಡೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಜನಶಕ್ತಿ ಮೀಡಿಯಾ ಸದಾ ಸಿದ್ಧ ಇದೆ. ಜನಶಕ್ತಿ ಮೀಡಿಯಾ ನಿಮ್ಮ ಮೀಡಿಯಾ, ಜನಪರವಾದ ಮೀಡಿಯಾವನ್ನ ಬೆಂಬಲಿಸಿ ನಮ್ಮ ಜೊತೆಗೆ ಇರಿ. Once again, Mariam, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you very much.
ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ.